Okay, good afternoon, everyone that's joining our discussion this afternoon. And for those of us who are observing the Sabbath, happy Sabbath to you. It's lovely to have all of you joining us this afternoon. And so, just before I introduce our participants or our panelists, if you will, this afternoon, um, I'd like to just mention that we are having a few technical difficulties, but that is all good. I think it's part of being young and it's all part of the technological side of things. So, with that being said, please keep all of us in prayer for those of you viewing us this afternoon. And so, I know that many of you might have watched our live stream or the live stream that I started with initially about 2 weeks ago, really exploring this topic on rediscovering the church post COVID-19. And so I was further then inspired to contact some young people just to get their ideas, to get their thoughts. And furthermore, I then decided that I would put together a youth edition of the discussion. And so I'd really like to welcome all of you out there who are watching us, who are viewing us on both Facebook and YouTube. And so, yeah, without any further ado, I'd like to just open up with a word of prayer. And then I will give the opportunity to each of the panelists, maybe just tell us your name, which church or area you originate from, and what you do, what you study, or what you do as your career. If you are comfortable to share that with us this afternoon. So let us just close our eyes for a word of prayer. Dear Lord, thank you so much for this opportunity we have this afternoon to come together as young people and really introduce and speak up and share our thoughts on a very pertinent topic that relates to all of us, not just as Christians, but as Seventh-day Adventist young people. Dear Lord, we are here to speak about really what church means to us, how we can further engage and maybe address or share ideas on our experience of church due to this pandemic, and also just how we can try and just open up more concepts or approaches to our whole engagement of church. Thank you for these young people that are so brave, that are so willing to be able to engage and discuss this afternoon. Please bless our viewers, all of those out there on both YouTube and Facebook that is viewing us. May you bless them also. And may they also grasp a good and positive understanding of what we are trying to achieve here this afternoon. This is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so
I just quickly want to know, can you guys hear me?
Once again. Yes, Joshua, we can hear you.
Okay.
All awesome. Good, we are live now. So for those of you, the panelists, or for anyone that is watching us on Facebook, if you'd like to share the live stream conversation, you are more than, I'll give you the opportunity now to do that. So any of the panelists, that actually includes myself as well. Okay, so with that happening, all of us sharing, etc., I will now just give each of the panelists just like 10 seconds. If each of us can just, if you can just say your name, which area your church you originate from, and then what you do in terms of either your career or what you are studying. So Laura, can we kick off with you?
Hi, everyone. Okay, so my name is Laura Hoffman. I belong to the Tygerberg Church. I am the youth leader at the church. So, yeah, I'm loving that. I am currently studying my master's in industrial psychology, and I am working as a product support intern at a company called Meltwater.
Perfect. Thanks, Laura. Erin, and then Joshua.
Hi, everybody. I'm Erin Pasquale. I attend Silverleaf SDA Church up on Helderberg Mountain. I'm involved with the teens of our church, which is quite fun and challenging at sometimes. And I'm currently also a high school student at Helderberg.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Erin. Joshua, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Joshua. I am from Natal, KwaZulu-Natal, from Durban, and I attend Pinetown SDA Church. I am a psychology student as well, second year psychology. I'm really enjoying it, and I'm looking to make it quite a big deal.
Awesome. Thanks, Joshua. Brittany?
Good afternoon, everybody. I recently, as in like just this week, I should probably give my name first. My name is Brittany. Thank you for that laugh, Natasha. Made me remind what I'm supposed to do. So I recently just finished my TEFL course. I think that's what got me excited. To skip my name, but yeah, I recently just finished that, so I'm currently a qualified TEFL teacher, looking for a job. If anybody out there would like to hire me. And when it comes to church, I'm involved with the teens, both the teens and the youth, and I take a lot of pride in that. I get excited, same as you, Laura, get excited about that type of work. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, awesome. And then I see Daniel is hopping on and off a little bit. I don't know, Daniel, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah. Daniel, you can go ahead.
I switched devices because this thing is very cracky, but I'm here now. All right.
Okay, all good.
All right, so we're doing introductions, right?
Yes, Daniel, so if you can just introduce yourself.
All right. Hello, everybody, everyone who's watching. It's Daniel Lant here. I was born in George, and I'm back in George. I attend Elim Seventh-day Adventist Church in Pakkelsdorp. I'm a third-year theology student at Helderberg. So I'm back home studying online because the colleges have not opened. Yes, I'm also part of the youth at my church.
Okay, I think we lost Daniel over there for a bit. So, yeah, as you've heard, Daniel is a theology student. He's in the Eden district. And yeah, so he's also here to join our discussion when he gets back on. But I think, so what we'll do now is just, so I just want to give a short introduction of this conversation, and then I will kick off with the first question. Okay, so like I said before, this conversation we're having this afternoon is sort of just a spin-off from the first panel discussion that I hosted, and this is the youth edition. So all the panelists here this afternoon are young people. They are people that I think are passionate about the church. They are passionate about God's work. They, I think, are driven young people as far as I know them. And so I think all of us are really interested in what has to be said in terms of experience, in terms of their opinions, in terms of, I think, where they believe the church could be going. And so with that, I would like to pose my first question to them. And this is, so as a young person, how have you been experiencing church during the lockdown? How have you been experiencing church during the lockdown? So, Laura, if you feel comfortable, will you kick us off with some of your just experiences, perspective, opinion around that question? Thanks so much.
Okay. So how I've experienced it, at first it was nice to be at home. I could sleep late, it was nice for all the wrong reasons. But then yeah, it was quite sad because I wouldn't be able to see my friends, my family. I mean, we were isolated from each other, so yeah, I didn't enjoy that much. And also as the youth leader, I felt like it's like my duty to make sure that like all the young people are involved, and that I try and make the lessons fun for them, etc. During Zoom, but there's only so much that you can really do. So yeah, it wasn't such a great experience, but at the same time, it has also opened new doors, which we will discuss in one of the other questions. So I won't get ahead of myself. But yeah, I think, I'll just say that.
Okay, perfect. Erin, do you want to go next?
For me, it's been pretty good. I applaud youth and teens leaders for like involving the children and youth, especially during Sabbath school. I think for that is a vital part of church, the Sabbath school lesson, and we've had many young people present. It's been pretty interesting seeing how they do their own spin on the Sabbath school lesson. So that was pretty good. And us as a teens group, we've also implemented doing every second Friday, in the month, the soup drive, because we've realized a great need in our area for, especially now that it's so cold and it's raining and it's wet.
Yeah.
There's a lot of activities been going on, which I'm very proud of. Our youth gets pretty involved, which is a good thing.
Yeah. Well, that's great to hear. Brittany, do you want to go next? And then Joshua?
It was sad. This is a sad time. I want to go back to church. In fact, I did go back to church today. Man, but I guess nothing can ever take away the connection that one gets when it comes to just being in church and listening to a sermon. I mean, that alone. I remember when lockdown happened, and then we had to go into virtual church, and then eventually we could come back to church. And I remember sitting through a sermon right in front, like very close to the pulpit, just trying to take it all in, the fact that we're at church. And I remember feeling amazing. And then, of course, we did a little bit of evangelism after post-COVID-19. And that was also great. So I definitely missed that particular part of church. But even with that, I think that we were able to connect as youth a little bit better via social media and via the Zoom platforms and so on. Yes, you couldn't do much, as Laura mentioned, but for some of the reason, people were a little bit more open to talk via Zoom and those platforms than they were in person. So I guess that was an upside to everything. But otherwise, I'm just sad that this is all happening and that we can't have church. So thank you. That's it. Yeah.
Thanks, Brittany.
Okay, so at our church, we've decided to take the social media and multimedia route. So during lockdown, they would have like pre-recorded sermons that would get posted and premiered on YouTube. And like at Sabbath school time, at Divine Hour, they would be premiered. And so it felt like church just continued, but from the comfort of your own home, And like Laura did say, there are good and bad things about that. You can get a bit too comfortable, sleep late because, it's on YouTube, I'll watch it later, And that that comfort zone thing, it kind of creeps in a little bit. But as the months went on, and like church was allowed to be open again with like a maximum of 50% capacity type of thing. So they opened the church, and then we could do live streaming, where the people that were at church was like the media team, the sound engineers, and so on. And then they could live stream the sermons that were recorded in church, but nobody was actually the members weren't there. So for us at Pinetown Church really just continued. There was never really a break. There was no interruption. We just changed the format overnight, and we were ready to run. And I've experienced staying at home. I've experienced being at church while the live streaming is going on, and it was a really different but a wonderful experience for me.
Yeah, that is so interesting just to hear all of you and your sort of, I think, reaction, even just your first reactions when I asked this question. Like Brittany was like, no. And Joshua was like, well, we just had to, accept it, pick it up, run with it, adjust. And I think, it's different for everyone. Maybe there are young people out there that are watching us on the stream this afternoon. And maybe for some of you, it was like, oh no, can this pandemic just end?
Yeah.
I miss my friends. I need to see people. I need to speak to people face to face. For others, maybe it was like, wow, this is like the perfect situation. Like, I just like being online. I enjoy it. I can really draw my own borders around myself. And so it's really different for everyone. And for those out there that are listening, share with us in the comments. How was church, the whole experience of church been for you? Has it been, what are the positive impact? What was the negative impact? We would love to hear from you and maybe just share. My second question, so the second question can get a little bit tricky, and you guys are welcome to answer this in the best possible way you can. But my question is, what do you think the church specifically would need to address in order to keep the youth connected and engaged in church activities? I know that all of us or all of you are just answering from your perspective, which is okay. All of us have different, situations out there. But at the same time, the church is a body corporate. The church has leaders. The church has a structure. And it would be interesting for me to hear just what your thoughts are on what you have seen and found within your own church communities. We don't have to all mention the disparities or the negativity or the big challenges we saw, but what do you think the church would need to just address in order to keep the young people especially engaged in its activities? Joshua, can we start with you?
Sure, no problem. I think one of the biggest things that churches need to address is involvement. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was last year or the year before that a total member involvement was launched, the whole concept. And I think that's the biggest thing. You can open a platform for youth to come on Zoom and discuss the lesson. You can do all these wonderful things. But if you do not stress the idea of involvement, then it becomes difficult for youth to want to be there. You know what I mean? And like, instead of just having the youth gather together to discuss the lesson, placing responsibility on the youth to say, listen, you're doing the lesson this week and we're going to have a roster, and it's you this week, it's you next week. And it gives the youth something to prepare for, something to be accountable for. And therefore they feel more involved. They feel obligated to do something and to do it properly. So more than just opening up a platform is to actually shift responsibility. I think that's a great way to get youth involved and to stay involved.
Okay, anyone can go next. Brittany or Laura?
Oh, sorry, Brittany. I wanted to say, I agree with that, Joshua. It's sometimes difficult when the youth do not take that responsibility. For example, within our church, growing up when we were younger, we were quite intimidated by the adults, and they would always encourage us, go and speak in the Sabbath school, go and do this, go and do that. But we would feel like, oh, but they have so much knowledge. They're adults, I'm too shy. And something that was really great with my youth is with everything with our classes being on Zoom, actually more of my youth became interested in doing the lesson study than what it was previously when we were gathering at church, which was really nice. So we haven't really done the lesson study for the adults, for example, but also more of the youth became involved with doing the Sabbath school, etc. But that's also because they wanted to do it. And I think as youth, we sometimes need to take that responsibility as well. The platform is there, but we don't always take that responsibility and say, you know what, I'm going to commit to this 2-year term. I'm going to speak in front of the church. I'm going to do this, and the Lord is going to help me. So, yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Okay, I just want to respond to Laura, and maybe she can, or maybe any of the other panelists can take that further. But I think sometimes it's, and I might be speaking maybe on behalf of the youth that feels a bit more on the intimidated side, where they also don't feel that they just want things dumped on them, if I can put it that way, or they just want to, I think, be drawn in into certain things, or to take, or be encouraged to be drawn to take certain responsibilities. How would you react to, inspiring this whole idea of leaders inspiring young people to draw them in, to get involved and to want to take on that responsibility? And maybe some of you can also maybe just answer to that aspect of it.
So maybe I can touch on that with what I also wanted to say. When it came to our youth, firstly, like I said, I'm okay. I didn't say this, but I'm from Mount Calvary Church up in Midrand, Gauteng. And at our church, I said earlier that I'm part of the leadership for the teens and the youth. So with the teens, it was very easy to be able to have a parent meeting. And to say to the parents, hey, we have programs for the teens. We have we want the teens to be involved in this program and that program. Please make sure that your teens are active and that they are taking on the responsibility that we give them. And the thing about the teens is, we as teachers, we already have a good relationship with them, so it didn't seem like we were putting things on them. And so it was easy to get the feedback and the responsibility from their side. But we just had that parent meeting to make sure that the parents and us as teachers, we are on par. However, it's a completely different ball game with youth, people who are like 18 and above, because you can't really speak to the parents and say, get your youth involved. But what we then did was, okay, we were like, okay, fine, let's give each member a call. Let's hear how they are doing firstly, to really get to know what's happening on your side. How can we help you? Is there anything that you need? Do you need data? Do you need a device maybe? Are you feeling lonely? And then after hearing all about that, we advertised that we were doing a couple of programs, but we wanted to hear from our own youth what it is they wanted. And I think when you add that aspect in, a lot of the time they are more likely to take the responsibility to actually join programs, to participate, because they've given their input. They've shared what they want out of the youth group. And that has helped a lot. So when it came to topics and choosing topics, we reached out to our young people and we're like, okay, here's a survey. Or when we called them, we were like, what is it that interested you? Or even just, I think as a youth leader, you need to have discernment, because sometimes they're not going to just say things but like just like that. So even in what they are talking to you about, what it is that they need, what are they struggling with, you can kind of pick up already, which topics to handle and what to really discuss. So yeah, topics that we actively went out and we sought for their advice on that. And then sorted through those types of things. And what we got was that as soon as we started advertising those particular topics, we realized that more participants were coming in. So that was one way where we saw this is how we can draw them in, as you put it, Natasha.
Eden?
Just to also comment on Brittany, what she said. I think guidance is also very important. I know when we started giving our young ones like to do the lesson, most of them were pretty nervous. They didn't know how to start off, and so us as leaders, we guided them. We like phoned them during the week, like, how do you need help with this and that? Do you understand what you must do? And that guidance has boosted the confidence of most of our teens. And now, as we move forward, now we don't really have to guide them. They take on the lesson. It's very interesting, and they are excited to do it. So
Joshua? Okay, Laura. Laura, you can go.
Go ahead, yeah.
Something I noticed within my youth is that they were very willing to do outreach. I think it was sometime last year when I think we were on level 2 with lockdown, so we could do more, and the COVID-19 cases were quite low, so people felt more comfortable. We did like 2 outreaches within, I think it was 8 weeks, and it went really well. And now we're busy with 2 projects as well. So I've noticed that they're more fired up to do something, and I think it is because of the pandemic. We've noticed that things have changed. Life is not the same anymore. So I think that the youth is ready to be used. We just need to use them.
I also just want to say I 100% agree with Brittany in that sometimes when putting things together, it is important to know what the youth really wants, because it's easy to say, guys, this is what we're going to do, and then they don't want to do it, and then you don't get support for it. So it's definitely, and you know what? Again, like Laura said, outreach, you can never go wrong with outreach, or very seldomly can you go wrong with outreach. There's something about helping another person that even when the youth, and you can see sometimes you'll get to the venue or whatever, and you'll see a bunch of grumpy faces, but give it 30 minutes, and when you're done with the program and you see how everybody's smiling, I've experienced that, being on the bad side of it and being on the side of the organizing of it, and it's incredible.
Great. I'm just wondering if there's something more that maybe we can do another round of some comments. If there's something more that you would like to say in terms of keeping youth connected and engaged. I know that we now have mentioned, calling people up and actually checking on them individually. We've mentioned, keeping them engaged in outreach projects as well. Eden mentioned about guidance, being able to seek and not be afraid to seek guidance from maybe the more matured youth or maybe the older folks that we look up to in our church. Is there any other items that you can think of that we can mention here in terms of keeping youth connected and engaged in church activities?
Yeah.
Okay, Brittany and then Eden.
Oh, am I lagging? Sorry.
That's all good. You go.
Oh, I'm good. Okay. This technology stuff. So I think one thing that is something fun to do is social games. So usually, like when you are at church, you only really do like a social, like at the end of a month or quarter type of thing. But I think what's nice about Zoom and any other platform is that you can actually have social evenings every second week, every week, where you just play nice friendly games. Look, what are our youth doing Friday nights? Set up a Bible quiz. What are our youth doing Saturday nights? Get them engaged in maybe in different kinds of games, of course, that are very Christian kosher. But get them involved in those things as well. Those, I think, games and virtual games also get people really excited as well. And that's just another way that I can think of to get more young people connected.
Great. Thanks, Brittany. Eden?
Another way, while pondering on this question, was the IT department and all these streaming networks and stuff. Us as the younger generation, we more tech savvy, we know more about technology and all that goes with it. So I think that interests a lot of young people, and involving them with maybe like streaming the stuff or maybe working the streaming devices or whatever, that is also another way of getting them involved.
Okay, is there anyone else? Laura, do you want to say something before I make a comment?
So last year when lockdown hit, I had a partner with in the youth, a gentleman that was a youth leader with me, and we thought of starting a Bible study in the week. And the previous youth leader had a Bible study, but it was difficult because it was in the middle of the week. Everyone had to be at church at 7, and yeah, people have things going on in the week. But with everything being on Zoom, it became so much easier. So we set a day in the week, and we send out the link, and it's so much easier now because there's even one of our youth members live in the Netherlands currently, so he can just join in with wherever he is via Zoom as well. And yeah, wherever we are in the comfort of our own home, we can join in on Zoom, and that has also really impacted the youth because it had allowed us to do Bible study together. I don't know about you guys, but Friday nights there's usually like a message, but we also used it to just like enjoy conversation with one another and catch up on the from whatever's happened in the week, etc. So Wednesday in our Bible study, it really helped us to connect with each other more on a spiritual level, and yeah, that has been really amazing. So that's just something that has worked for us as well.
So I got a really interesting question here from our Facebook live stream. Someone asked, can the format adapt or should it stay the same? And I think what this person is referring to is this whole idea of church. So we've mentioned, all of you have mentioned, different aspects of, online, in-person church, through WhatsApp, through other social media, through, like Laura, you just explained now, Bible study connection also. So now in this whole scope or idea of doing church, being able to meet or not meet, what do you think in terms of the format of things? What do you think should the order of the day be? Is it okay that just for young people especially, that it should stay the same? Should anything changed or be adapted? What are your thoughts on that type of thing?
Can I go?
Yes, Josh, you can go.
Okay. So personally, I think change is good. I like change personally. And I think, like the structure of the Adventist church and like that 9 to 12, those 3 hours at church, like what we do, the order, all of that it's fantastic. It's great. However, like when we were locked down and we couldn't be in the church building, we were forced to do something and we didn't know what. So we were creative in that certain groups, they would meet in each other's houses. You'd have maybe 6 people, 7 people in a house. Because of COVID, you don't want too many people and so on. But there was one group that I was part of that was a slightly bigger group. And we would go on, there's like a little like a hike type of trail type of thing. And it's about 2 kilometers, 4 kilometers to a waterfall. And then we would sit around the waterfall and we would have church there. And it was so nice to be able to connect with God in nature. And it was totally different environment. It took a little bit of getting used to, but I think that is a good change. Like certain changes do make people feel uncomfortable, and I understand that some people prefer to be in the sanctuary on a Sabbath between 9 to 12. But we're talking about youth, and in the context of youth, and youth sometimes do enjoy a little bit of a laid back experience every now and then. And to be able to just dress down and not be too formalized, it does give you a little breathing space. And it worked for us. And funny enough, it wasn't just the youth that went to the outdoor church program that we had set up. There were a lot of adults. There were a lot of kids, like 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds that were there because everybody found something that they could enjoy in nature versus the consistent going to church structure that we've grown up with.
Yeah.
Can I go next?
Mhm.
I definitely agree with Joshua. I think us as young people, we need a bit of change to keep us alive, keep us awake. I think structure, in my opinion, can also get a bit boring and too routine. So definitely change needs to come into play sometime. And when it's different, most people are more interested to do it, that I've picked up in our church. And so, yeah, adapting is definitely something we should consider.
Thanks, Eden. I think with Joshua and Eden's comment so far, I just want to say that I think it's interesting what you are mentioning in terms of outside of the sanctuary walls, but I think it's also important for us to realize and to see the value and importance of what happens inside those walls also now during and post COVID. And I think maybe in the next panel discussions that I'll be hosting with leaders, pastors, we will deal more with those things specifically, because at the end of the day, we are still a community of faith that finds value in the sanctuary, but I think we have all been challenged because of the COVID-19 pandemic and the situation we find ourselves in by having to really connect outside of those walls and be okay still outside of those walls. Laura and then Brittany, do you want to go?
I 100% agree. Actually, pre-COVID, we would sometimes, as the youth now, would not go to church, and then we would go walking in Newlands Forest, and then we'll sit and do the lesson study and discussion, and then we'd have lunch together. And that was so nice. I loved it. And actually, one of our outreach programs, we decided instead of going to church, we're going to do the outreach in the morning. And it was just such a great experience as well to rather do it in the morning than the afternoon, because usually, people, they have their lunch, then they're tired and they don't want to go to the outreach. Where this, everyone was fresh and ready to go. So I think definitely COVID has allowed some of that adaptability. I don't see anything wrong with the structure of the church, but I think it could be great if we don't get stuck in this routine of this is what Sabbath must be like. I must go to church, I have lunch, I have a nap, and then whatever, do like a little bit of a Bible study. Like Sabbath is so much more than that. And we all, I'm sure, are learning about this in our lesson studies that we are doing. So yeah, adaptability I think is number one on the radar for the youth. And yeah, if we can just get out of our comfort zones a bit. I think, growing up, it was just like this structure. You knew what was going to happen with Sabbath, but sometimes we just need to think outside of the box, and you don't always need to do like an outreach with the group. Sometimes, if you just feel, you know what, I'm gonna make soup this week and I'm gonna go hand out to people, and yeah, you can do it on your own, you can do it with 3 other friends. And yeah, I've really seen not even just my own youth, but other churches' youth as well. They are more comfortable in taking charge and doing things a little bit differently. So yeah, I'm excited to see what happens in the future.
Okay. Is that sound still there?
It's gone now. You can continue.
Great. Awesome.
Thanks, Brittany.
All right. So I don't have a different opinion or a different view from what has been said. I do believe in change, and I'm someone who actually at my church, I am known for just thinking out of the box and maybe sometimes being a little bit too over, excited about changing things. And it can sometimes get me into trouble. But what I saw, something happened this morning at our church, that I think is safe enough to share. I don't have to share the details, but it showed me a different view. It showed me a different side to this particular question that we're dealing with. We went to church. Church was open for the first time today since our last wave. And it was a little empty compared to the previous Sabbaths that we have had church post COVID-19. And when we were asked, what's happening, it was given account that unfortunately some of our, actually I don't know if it's an unfortunate thing or a fortunate thing, but I don't know, some of our members had training during the Sabbath morning worship, and it was a bit of a problem because training with regards to like if it's pathfinders and youth, in and of itself, it's all good. It needs to be done. But there was a bit of a problem in that some people felt that the worship time, 9 to 11, 9 to 12, should have been dedicated to that only. And then have your training maybe in the afternoon or the Sunday. And listening to this morning really made me think, because I knew this afternoon I'm going to join a discussion where we're going to be talking about the Rediscovering Church. And in my mind, I was thinking, okay, so what do we do? Because here's an opportunity. People find these departments are finding this as an opportunity for them to do training on days that they can't really do training. During the week is difficult. And then but so they find the opportunity during Sabbath hours, but at the same time now our churches are going to be empty when they are open. So because people stay at home and they join the training instead. So I think that things are getting to a point where at the beginning it was fun. It was all fun. We switched from physical church to virtual church, and that was a whole fun experience for us. But now I think things are starting to get to a point where programs are clashing, especially with what we would have termed as the normal worship hours, 9 to 12. And it's getting to a point where people are getting a bit agitated. I think people are frustrated in general, but I think that the fact that this is also happening, things like this is also happening, are making people more agitated. And so I was just thinking, I don't know, maybe I can pose this to the group if that's okay. What should we be doing like at this particular point when we're having these different departments, clash in their different programs, and we just don't know. So yeah, change, I do agree it needs to happen to a degree, and where do we draw that line? What do our youth think where we should draw the line? That's the question I'm basically asking.
I think
Tash, I
Joshua's
just want
going
to say something before we move on. Sorry. Just before we move on from this point, I just wanted to say, if we want to be very technical and go back to the question was, should we change church structure? Personally, no, we should not, but we can. We can, in certain areas, tweak things. We can change things within the framework. But should we? No, there's no reason to. It's just that sometimes if you're limited, you need to make a few changes. But that does not mean that once hopefully, God willing, COVID-19 disappears and we go back to church, it does not mean that the whole system needs to be flipped on its head. It doesn't have to be like that. It's just when we are limited, be creative, be adaptive, and be willing to make changes to make the program work.
Good point there, Joshua. So yeah, I just want to know, is there anyone else who would like to address Brittany's question? And then I will make my comment and we can move on to the last question in our conversation.
I'll go.
Okay.
So, I guess the best way that I can think about answering this is to look at who our best example is, and that was Jesus. And I mean, he didn't always just go to church on Sabbath. He did many things on Sabbath that the Pharisees saw as work, etc. And I think sometimes we need to make sure that we don't become too legalistic when it comes to Sabbath. It's supposed to be a joyous day. But I think that there is a time to fellowship and worship with one another. And then there is a time where you can do other things that will lead you closer to God. For me personally, I enjoy being with the other people in my community and engaging with them, speaking to them about the lesson, whatever it may be that we do. And that only really happens in a certain hour or a certain part of my day. So I would preferably want all the other details to be done in the afternoon, because otherwise I miss that. And to me, that's what makes Sabbath special as well. There's many other things that make Sabbath special, but that engagement really is something that I look forward to. So I don't know how other people feel about it, but at least also within our church, the leaders generally should discuss things with one another. If they know that they're going to plan something that might be a little bit controversial or might impact other plans that the other leaders have during the day, then I think, why not talk to one another, discuss it, come up with a better solution. We don't have to always have complications on a day that's supposed to be a celebration.
Okay, good point, Laura. I think, Brittany, I think this question that you are specifically speaking about now, we will also maybe address later in the other panel discussions I will be having, where I'll be hosting some leaders, and just to hear, from their side, because sometimes you can't just, I think now is an opportunity for young people to speak. But then also leaders have to come along and also give us their view, because sometimes it might be a little bit more technical on their side. There might be more variables at play. But I do agree with Laura in that it really needs to be communicative. It needs to be a, giving back and taking relationship. And also, of course, so that all things meet to a certain end. And that is really what is the goal in mind here. What is it that we are trying to do, or the goal we're trying to reach or meet? And so with that being said, I'd like for us to move into our last question for our discussion here. And that is to ask you, as young people, coming from your different backgrounds, your different points of view, your different positions where you are in your churches, in your youth groups, what you think, what current ideas do you think you would propose to leaders that they could maybe explore more in the functioning of their church? I know for all of us, it's really difficult. Leaders are dealing with a lot of heavy stuff. We are dealing with death. We are dealing with grief. We are dealing with displacement, abuse, a variety of very difficult and tough issues in our churches. But for our conversation specifically here this afternoon, as we are thinking about rediscovering church and what that means to us as young people, what can we propose in terms of what leaders could explore more and think about more, because things are not going to go back to normal as much as we want it to. It won't ever be the same again. What are your thoughts on that as we close off? Josh, can we start with you? You look like you are thinking. So, as the only guy in our discussion this afternoon, we'd like to give you the floor.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking really hard and really fast. But honestly, I think empathy is the answer. And empathy, not just actually like really feeling what the youth are going through, but actually placing themselves in the position of the youth, And a lot of the time, and I don't mean this to offend anybody, but a lot of the time, adults, when we, like when the young people make decisions or whatever, adults are very quick to say, I was also young. I know what goes on in that world. don't do it, you're going to get yourself in trouble. But then when we come to church and the youth request a change or an adaptation in some area, it's no, we don't do things like that. We do it this way. And it's like, did you forget that you were also a young person once and that you had needs? So you see the controversy right there. And I think if we could get more of that, if we could get an empathetic perspective from church leadership towards the youth, and a genuine interest in what do the youth actually need above what they want. Because what we want is to go bowling, have a sports day, whatever. But what do we need? And that is the question that needs to be answered. And yeah, that's about it.
Thanks, Josh. Laura, and then Erin and Brittany.
I don't really know. Because it's something that I struggle with as well. I've also been thinking, what can we do? And as a leader, you try to be the best that you can. You try to do fun things. You try to organize outreach programs. You try all these things, and most of the time it's usually like the same handful of people that join. So I have had the same struggle, and a decision that I made in the beginning of when I decided to be youth leader was that I was going to concentrate on the people who are engaged, who want to be there. And then the others will see what we are doing and they can make their decision if they want to join in or not. Because I knew if I was going to stress myself into like a mini coma to try and get everybody else to join in and not concentrate on those who are there, then I might lose those who are there. Exactly. So I guess it goes back to what Brittany said earlier. Just make sure that those who are involved, that their needs are being seen to, that they feel heard, and that we move in, like, how can I say, we move forward together. I mean, as being a leader, I don't have to make all the decisions. I'm just the person that sits on the church board that says the youth wants to do this, but the youth is the ones who have to come up with the ideas and who just come to me and I'm their spokesperson. So I think it's each one of our responsibilities to when we think of ideas or when we want to do something, then we take charge.
No, all the points that have been said are pretty important and vital. But I also think we should also put God first in all the decisions that we make, especially when it comes to like guiding the youth, because we don't know everything, even though some of us think we do, and especially with dealing with teens and young people, it's important that you try your best to lead them in the right way. That's why I feel we should also consult with God first, because He knows ultimately what is best. And I totally agree with what Laura and Joshua said. Get the youth's opinions on what they want to do, and because if we doing stuff that aren't interested in them, we just basically lose them. And I've seen that, especially now in this pandemic time, if we don't keep the youth engaged, keep them interested, we lose them, and that's one thing we don't want to happen.
Yeah.
From my side, I think that what we can do as a church is to actually get the adults also to join our programs and to get involved. I think that with youth, even though we're at a certain age where we're also deciding for ourselves, if our youth see that our adults aren't interested in what is being presented, very often do they rather just they just stay away. But if they see our adults are getting into the groove of things, they're more likely to pitch up. And not only that, but a lot of our youth are also still living at home, especially now during COVID. A lot of the youth have come back home. So if you as a parent, you put up the laptop or the device, in your TV room or whatever the case is, and you say, I'm going to watch this now. I mean, you don't have to say to your young person, come watch with me. But simply just being there and putting up that device and joining in on a program, um, them being in the house, it just creates a sense of interest. What are they watching? What are they participating in? Oh wow, they look like they're having a lot of fun. And I think that also helps a lot in setting an example as adults to also take part in these things. And I think, unfortunately, yes, as a church, we it's good for us to have, children, teens, adult, youth, adults. But I think most of the time, what needs to happen is we need to come together as well, as departments, and work together, not in isolation. And when our parents, along with the children, along with when we work together, we're more likely to work towards the same goal instead of just dragging department from department from department and doing our own thing. Um, so I think a practical tip would be for our adults to also, instead of taking a nap, join the youth program. Get involved.
She's like helping anybody, Brittany.
Sorry, I thought this is a youth edition, and when youth are speaking with youth, we just give it straight. We don't have time to beat about the bush. So let's join as adults, as parents. We ask for your support as well, to join our programs, to encourage us as youth, because sometimes we don't feel like joining these programs. But if you are encouraging us, that helps a lot as well.
Thanks, awesome, Brittany. I just want to highlight a comment from the Facebook live stream from Janke. I think that having a Sabbath out of the ordinary structure can be refreshing every now and then, maybe once a term, and could inspire some youth to join who maybe haven't joined the traditional church structure in a while. But this shouldn't replace traditional church. I think this speaks to what Joshua had said. We're not replacing anything here. It should complement it. Wow, that's a really lovely comment. Thank you so much, Janke, for that comment. Is there anyone else, any one of you, as our panelists here, who would just like to make any other comments, or maybe even you want to pose a question to our audience, something to think about, if it's to the young people, if it's to leaders? Is there something that you would like to contribute in that aspect of things?
Yes, I would like to say that, there is a difference between perceived needs and felt needs. Okay. In the Spirit of Prophecy, we read that Christ had a method in his ministry, and his method was to meet the needs of people, right? He did not meet what he thought were their needs. He met their actual need because he was with the people and he felt their needs. Whereas with the Pharisees and the scribes and the religious leaders of that day, they would stay indoors and they were looking down because, they elevated themselves. They would look down at the people and give them what they think the people need. And that's why Jesus was the most prolific missionary to ever walk the planet, because he felt the needs of the people. And in the same way, church leadership needs to feel the need of the youth and meet that need. And in the same way, youth, I feel, are not to act entitled to, beauty treatment. They're not supposed to sit there and wait for the church to give them what they want. The youth also need to be of service. They need to also be looking for needs and where to fill needs. And together with the rest of the church, because it's sad that a lot of churches, the youth sort of detaches themselves a little bit from the rest of the church, because they don't get their own way. But if the youth and the church together could meet the felt needs of those around them in their communities and spheres of influence, we can change the world.
Before anyone else makes a comment, I think, yeah, that is such a big thing, Joshua, that I think the more young people start realizing how much faith I think God has in us, that we can change the world, that it is possible, if we do it with the right methods, with the right mindset and motive, and obviously with God's leading and instruction. Is there anyone else who'd like to make the next comment, or like I said, if there's a question that you would like to leave with the audience this afternoon?
The last thing I'd like to say, it's something that I have, it's something that's always heavy upon my heart when working with young people and teens. I am a very strong advocate for young people taking initiative and being proactive instead of criticizing our adults and criticizing the methods that are there. I think that it's very easy to be able to point at somebody or at some system and to be able to say that system is bad, that system is old, that system doesn't work anymore, and then to say I'm leaving. I don't think that that is a very good attitude for us as young people to have. I think we need to be, instead of just pointing out this is wrong and that's wrong, I think we need to be proactive. We need to say, okay, this is the issue. As a young person, go and sit down with an elder, go and sit down with someone who's on the board and say, okay, I think this is an issue. And then instead of just saying goodbye, how about discussing or eliciting a discussion of how we can work on that issue? I think that the Matthew 18 principle, for example, if somebody did something wrong to you as a young person in church, it's always good to rather go and speak to that person. And, God has given us beautiful principles in the Bible of how to go about reconciliation and if something goes wrong. And we need to use that, because at the end of the day, as much as the adults and the elderly of our church will be held accountable for the mistakes they've made or the errors that they may have made within the church and with regards to handling our young people, as much as they will be accountable for that, God is also going to ask us as young people, but what did you do with the resources that I gave you? What did you do with the talents I gave you? And for a lot of us, we're going to be ashamed to say, unfortunately, I didn't do anything. All I did was sit and mope, and I didn't do anything. So I'm a very strong advocate in, yes, I hear you as a young person. You are struggling, you are dealing with this, but at the same time, you need to verbalize it, speak it, share with somebody who really does care about your well-being. Here today on this panel, we have youth leaders who are, I can say from what I've heard today, that here are at least 4 or 5 young youth leaders who are willing to hear you out. I mean, even if you have to message us via Facebook and we live far away from you, but if you felt like today, at 5 of us, somebody out there cares about your well-being, about your spiritual well-being, message us, get in contact with us, or speak to somebody in your local church to help you deal with whatever it is that you are struggling with. And then also just an outreach to our elderly to be open-minded, to sit down and have and be yes, to be open-minded and to be welcoming to whatever is said. And let's work together as a church. Let's work together to make the changes that are necessary for the times that we are living in.
Thanks so much, Brittany. Laura, and then Erin.
Brittany, that made me think of my boss. In like our first day, he told us that if there's something that we think can be done better, then we need to tell him. But we can't just come to him and say we don't like this. We can only come to him if we have a better solution. Because what can he do if we just go to him and say we don't like this, we don't like doing it this way, it's not working, but there's no suggestion on how to make it better. And I think in this situation with church, I think it's very applicable as well. And then I guess it's a question that I want to leave to the viewers who will watch this whenever you watch this, is if you are not involved in your church, I want you to ask the question, why? A lot of people sometimes think, I will get baptized when I'm this perfect person, or I will get involved when I'm a better Christian. And you know what? That's not going to happen. You become better when you take on responsibility. You become better when you allow the Lord to work within you and he takes you on a path. So I want to challenge everyone that is watching this, message your youth leader and say, hey, what can I do? Let's get involved.
Awesome.
Just to again comment on Brittany's point, I think it's important that we create a safe space for our youth and our young children in church so they can feel they are being heard, because if they aren't being heard, they're not going to come forth and say, can we do this better? Can we do this better? So it's important that we have that safe space for young people to actually voice their opinion and not feel judged or what they're saying isn't important. So yeah.
Great. Okay. So thank you all panelists for your comments, your recommendations, your perspectives, your experiences that you have shared with all of us this afternoon. And my hope and my prayer is, and well, before I say that, I'm sure that there was someone out there that could relate to something you were saying. And that I think was important for this discussion for this afternoon. I also just want to remind those who are viewing us on the live stream, please click on the survey that has been added to both the YouTube and Facebook live streams here this afternoon. I would really appreciate it if you fill that out for us. Remember, it's anonymous, so you don't have to add your email address, you don't have to add your name or any other personal information. That's really just to give this whole series for the month of September so that we can actually make due of some of this information and see how we can maybe approach these questions or these comments or the feedback that you are giving us through the survey. So once again, I'd just like to thank everyone on our panel this afternoon. There is some of our members that unfortunately didn't make it to the live, but we would just like to, in their absence, just thank them as well and acknowledge that they also would have had a really valuable contribution to this discussion. That would be Daniel Lund, Mandisa, as well as Pastor Lunga. So, I hope that everyone that has viewed us this afternoon has been able to take something away from what the youth has to say, from their experience, and just from also the challenge to not just the senior youth, the current youth, but also to our leaders and to our elder folks and church members. So once again, panel, thank you so much for your time. Can we please just bow our heads in prayer? Dear God, thank you for this opportunity we had as youth to come together and just speak on this topic of how we can possibly better rediscover what church means to each of us. Dear Lord, we know that these young people out there on the stream this afternoon that could be sitting with many questions, that have maybe come to this conversation this afternoon with many questions, and maybe they have received an answer, maybe they have been inspired, maybe they have been challenged to do something about it. But whatever the case is for each of us, we pray and ask that your Holy Spirit may be present with us, dear Lord, to show us the way, to impress on our hearts and minds what it is that each of us can do for ourselves as we form part of this big church community and faith. I pray that you may bless us, that you may please go with us, Lord, and that if anything was said that was out of line here this afternoon, that you may forgive us, but also that even our critique may be taken in good faith towards one another, all to the building up of your church. We pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen. So thank you once again to the panelists for joining us this afternoon. We hope to see all of you soon again. Please do keep in mind to just follow on the Girl Positive Facebook page. The more adverts coming up soon about the future panel discussions that I will be hosting next week and following that as well. May all of you keep well. May you keep safe. May you go with God. God bless.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.